Another great way to bevel these feathers and actually lift each one a little bit is to use the modeling spoon to do that. Just using it with a little bit of pressure here, and it creates the beveling that we need. It creates the 3-dimension. We'll also use the modeling spoon to put the quills in these feathers. We'll take a spoon that has a fairly small point on it, and on these larger feathers we'll put a little quill running down the center of it. We just use the edge of the tool to do that. On these shorter feathers up here near the beak, we'll just have a little crease running down the middle of those, but again we'll just use the side of the tool to put a little crease running down the middle of them. Modeling spoon is also very handy for smoothing out some of our rougher beveling. Like on the eye, we don't want any kind of bumps or dents in the eyeball here, so we'll use the modeling spoon to smooth that out. It gives it even a polished sort of a look, which will help when we're doing the coloring later. We'll also use the modeling spoon to clean up some of these finer lines, like the roll of skin around the beak. We also have up here his nostril, there's a little roll of skin that actually stands out around that, and we'll just use the point of the spoon here to help bring that out. There's also some dotted lines running here. There's a little bit of a bump on his beak, and we'll use this tool to help bring that out. And here again we'll use it a little bit like a beveling tool by using the edge of it along that line, but then we'll flatten it out and smooth away from there so that it looks like that is even pear shaded away a little bit. A modeling spoon is a very, very useful tool to use. Now that we've completed the beveling on the feathers and we have quills running down the center of each, we need to add some texture to give it that feather sort of look. And for this we're just going to use the swivel knife. Just take some very short strokes that have a bit of an angle to them, and running them from heavier at the edge of the feather to lighter as you move toward the quill, we create something that looks like that feather texture. Now we need to put some feather texture on these feathers here below his neck. These are the ones that will be brown, and we need to give them a quill and some texture. There's a tool that's made, it's number F121, that does a really great job of doing that. It has some diagonal lines on it, and it leaves a little raised quill area running up the center. And we take this tool and just run it down the center of each of these feathers, fading it out as we get toward the end, but it leaves a nice quill texture and leaves those diagonal lines on there as well. Now that we have the texture on the feathers, it's time for us to make this entire picture stand out from the background, and we do that with beveling. I'm going to use a traditional floral type of beveler. The number on the one I have here is B702. And we're going to just go around and bevel the outline of this eagle so that he stands out real sharply against the background. We'll be putting a matted type of texture around him so that to produce even more contrast. So that's why I'm using a beveler with a checkered texture right now. And you can use whatever size or type of beveler you have that works best for you. In fact, I'll be using a small pointed one here in a minute to reach in between some of these feathers and such to do a real crisp job. This is probably where you can get some of the deepest impressions of anything that you've done. This is where you want to make your eagle really stand out. So you can bevel, good half the thickness of your leather if you wish at this point. As you get down here to where you're beveling the feathers now, this tool isn't going to want to fit up in between each one of those feathers. So a tool that works really great for that, there's a couple of tools. One, depending on the shape, is a number F976. It's a checkered textured beveler that comes to a narrow point. It works pretty good for these areas like that. It has a texture similar to the backgrounding tool that I'm using, and so it does a good job of defining those places like that. Another great tool that works when you have even narrower openings would be the A98. It's a little background type tool. It doesn't have any bevel to it, and but it works really good again for getting in between these feathers and leaving a matted texture. And again, the checkering on it is very similar to the backgrounding or to the beveling tool that I was just using. Once we've beveled all the way around the outline of this bird and gotten each of the feathers detailed, we'll come back with a matting type of tool and remove the halos that are around there. We have matting type of tools that we use in the figure carving. There's a series of them. They come in different sizes. This is kind of the medium size that I'll be using here. The number on it is F900, and it has a little bit coarser texture, and it's very flat. It works. It is a matting type tool, and mostly what I'm going to do with it is just use it to get rid of the halo that my beveling left around the bird. So we'll use this once we're done with the beveling to make the eagle really look like it's standing out from the background. Now that we've finished with the backgrounding around our eagle, I like to put a little coarser texture in the background areas behind it to make it really stand out on this piece of leather. The tool that I'm going to use is number E294, which just has a bunch of random lines running across it. And it does a great job of creating an interesting background texture. One of the things I would have you notice about how this tool is being used is that I actually rotate it a little bit between each impression. If you'll notice, I turn it just a little. That way we don't get a repeating pattern, and it keeps that texture very random. And all I'm doing, you can see, is starting out fairly deep at the up close to the eagle, but as I move away from it, I get lighter and lighter with those impressions so that they fade out and disappear. It helps to give us a lot more contrast, makes this eagle stand out real nicely on this piece of leather.